Watch this.
They say they were given bad advice. He says it was a simple mistake. Two Canyon County candidates and the Secretary of State square off on an attempted election switcheroo.
It was an opportunity to do it that had never been probably financially feasible before.
Financially feasible and historically significant. Kind of like the current one. We're taking a stroll down memory lane, which just happens to lead to the 1984 Democratic National Convention, with a former reporter who was there. Tardies, dress codes, and now cell phones. Another school rule students are having to remember for the new year. How well are they remembering? And are the new no phone policies working? You can call it a do-si-do, with the Democrats running for House and Senate in District 11 doing a bit of a dance. After watching the Republicans promenade their way through a primary, the two Canyon County Democratic candidates decided to do a little a la man left 4 weeks later and switch partners. Well, they wanted to switch places on the ballot, but we might as well stick with the whole square dance theme. After all, it is the state dance, right? They withdrew from their races, and then they refiled to fill each other's quote-unquote vacancy. After getting approval from the caller, in this case that would be the Secretary of State, they didn't seem to miss a step in this dance, grooving toward the general election, except the caller, or the Secretary of State, apparently realized the mistake and turned the two back around, back to their original partners and places. Hunter Funk weaves the rest of the ring for us.
After the Republican primary, a few of us kind of were talking about maybe changing the matchups a little bit.
A Secretary of State messed up and gave us bad legal advice.
In District 11, Tony Farrow was running for senator. Anthony Porto was running for House Seat A. Porto says because Farrow is a more well-known candidate, they wondered if they could flip seats.
And so I thought initially that it wasn't legal, probably, that it wasn't really the kind of thing that we could do, but it was Anthony's job to go find out, and so he checked with the Secretary of State's office repeatedly, and they just kept saying, it's fine, it's fine.
We got all the legal channels approved, notarized documents. Their legal team approved all of that.
Emails we received from District 11 Chairman Greg Stuck confirmed this. An email to Anthony from the elections director states, after chatting with the Secretary of State, Phil McGrain, we believe that you can withdraw and change seats.
It was done over 6 weeks.
Went into the office and had everything notarized, and they said go for it, so we did.
But then came this email a few weeks later from Phil McGrain. After reviewing all the circumstances, Idaho Code clearly states that once an individual withdraws from a race, only when a vacancy occurs due to the death of a candidate, may that individual be appointed to fill a vacancy. It continues to say that their office provided inaccurate guidance regarding the appointment process. And to correct it, their office will reverse the appointments and withdrawals and restore candidacy. They apologized and stated they're thankful this error came to light before submitting the names for the ballot, and that they will review it more thoroughly in the future.
It's still business as usual we're on the ballot for District 11. The issues are the same. The constituents are the same.
When we called McGrain's office, they agreed, saying they made a mistake. But District 11 Chairman Greg Stuck says this isn't right. He sent a letter to the Secretary of State saying, since the withdrawals are legal, but the appointments were not, the only legal course of action is to remove them from the ballot. And election oversight is the job of the Secretary of State, saying, quote, you, sir, have failed the people of Idaho. I'm asking that their names be removed from the ballot and for your immediate resignation.
I don't think there's enough harm to anyone, as long as the voters are still able to have a choice and have good options and good choices. I don't think that the Secretary of State's office has done anything irreparable or worthy of a resignation.
So this November, District 11 candidates will be what was seen in May. Anthony for House Seat A and Farrow for the Senate seat.
Okay, so what about legal repercussions of this? They don't seem too happy about it. At least one of them doesn't.
Legal repercussions, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I will say when it comes to financial, a lot of the candidates, they had mentioned that they started getting stickers to put over what their currency was so then they could have new campaign ads, things like that. So they were starting to pay for that. And now they're
Yeah.
out that money. But
That's true. So I have to redo all that stuff. All right.
Yeah.
Just going all the way to we need to remove the Secretary of State from office. It's a bit of a stretch.
you know, when I was talking to him, he said, if I go that far, then maybe we can negotiate on a smaller plan.
Okay.
So
Start at one end and work your way back.
yeah, I guess it works.
All right. Thanks, Hunter. Well, on the national Democratic stage, this year's Democratic National Convention has been dubbed as historic. Weeks after the aging incumbent steps aside, in steps a woman of color with a chance to be president of the United States for the very first time. But 40 years ago, the DNC was also an historic one for a similar reason. It was the first time a woman was ever nominated to be one step removed from the Oval Office. That'd be Geraldine Ferraro. It was meaningful for another reason as well, because back then, Democrats had a stronger foothold in the Gem State. The governor, the state auditor, the state treasurer, they were all Democrats. In fact, Idaho was in the middle of a 24-year stretch of Democratic governors with 33 Democratic lawmakers in the State House. Back in 1984, KTVB sent a reporter to both party conventions, the Republican one in Dallas and the Democratic one in San Francisco. And while our coverage of the Republican convention is lost somewhere in our archives, we were able to revive the Democratic version and reminisce with the news channel, or should I say, News Center 7 reporter who was there. The contrast in conventions, looking over a distance of 4 decades, is obvious.
Quite a difference, yeah.
But it's also significant.
Your choice, our next Vice President of the United States, Geraldine Ferraro.
She was the first woman nominated for vice president. There was a lot of excitement.
Bob Cooper,
So I just talked about the Boise, Idaho people, and I knew most of them.
was in San Francisco in '84,
And then this is the official press credential for the course of the convention. So
working for KTVB.
for me as a reporter from a small market to be at a national convention was pretty amazing.
Bob, you've been busy all day following the Idaho delegates. How are things going over there?
Janet and Chris, things are going pretty well out here.
Was there an excitement for you
yeah.
or for the Democrats to be there?
Yeah.
There may have been excitement,
Front page news.
but there wasn't a conventional consensus.
Mark, have you decided who you're supporting yet?
Nope.
The pageantry
The DJ and the music,
wasn't the only disparity between this
Idaho cast 27 votes for Kamala Harris.
and 40 years ago. There's a clear-cut favorite this year. In '84, that wasn't the case.
84 was very close, and most of the reporting that I did from the Idaho delegation perspective, because we were there to cover local people, and it really was, how is the Idaho delegation going to split?
With the first ballot now just 2 nights away, the Idaho tally remains Hart 11, Mondale 7, and 4 still undecided.
The uncertainty added to the intrigue, especially when it came to Idaho's vote.
So it's sort of interesting because many of the women delegates were supporting Gary Hart, even though Walter Mondale had nominated Geraldine Ferraro.
6 of Gary Hart's 11 Idaho delegates are women, and we wondered if all of the publicity about Ferraro has influenced the Idaho delegates today. Coeur d'Alene's Jeannie Givens made it very clear there's no way her vote will change.
There are folks here that are Hart delegates who haven't been involved in the process. They started out as loyal volunteers, and they worked their way all the way down to the convention. No way are they going to just roll over for Mondale.
There was a battle, but it was pretty amicable. You know, there wasn't the kind of name calling that you see so much in politics nowadays.
And it came down to that last day.
Yeah.
The voting begins in just a couple of hours, and News Center 7's Bob Cooper gives us a preview of how things should go in the Idaho delegation.
We had Andrews, Evans, Mel Morgan. They were like the honchos.
And Bob says those 3 were undecided until that last moment.
You kind of knew what was going to happen. You know, there was some doubt, some possibility that Hart was going to pull it off, but it was pretty clear most of the week that Mondale was going to be the nominee.
But Evans sees it the other way.
But Governor Evans did an interview with me on that last day where he pretty much indicated that he was going to go with Mondale.
I think it's the reality of the circumstance that it's best to be on the team that the winner.
And his statement was, in this world, it's usually best to be on the winning team.
And I've not made the announcement officially, but I'm going to be leaning that way.
So I think that's probably why some of those votes swung that way.
The state of Idaho, that great potato state, and the state of mountains and lakes, cast 10 votes for Walter Mondale 12 votes for Gary Hart.
Despite Idaho's tally, Walter Mondale became the Democratic nominee on the first ballot, something that likely wouldn't matter much come November.
No, I'm enthusiastic about Mondale. He'll be tough in Idaho. It's a Reagan state.
So there wasn't a lot of suspense. It was just kind of the pageantry and the show and being able to see history happen in person.
Although anything is possible, the experts still say Gary Hart's campaign is over.
And Bob was happy he was one of those persons.
You don't get that opportunity very often working in local TV, so it was a pretty cool thing.
With the Idaho Democrats in San Francisco, I'm Bob Cooper, News Center 7.
Well, Bob told us before he worked in Boise, he was a reporter in Rochester, Minnesota, and so he had some history with the Democratic presidential candidate, Walter Mondale. The outcome of the convention vote may have been predictable, according to Bob, but so was the subsequent presidential election. Republican Ronald Reagan won in a landslide, as you might remember, and as chair of Idaho's Democratic Party told Bob back in '84, Idaho was a Reagan state, taking 72% of the vote in the gem state. It looks like kids are going to have to keep saying BRB to their cell phones because we are 1 week into the school year, and they're saying, OMG, this policy is GR8. You know what else is great? All your comments and your questions. You can text them to us. Send them to 208-321-5614 and send them with your name and the hashtag #the208. If they're clean, concise, and clever, we might show yours at the end of the show. You know, new teachers, new classes, new routines. It's all part of getting into the groove of a new school year. And for some Treasure Valley students, this new year involves some new rules with regard to cell phones. In an effort to decrease distractions in the classroom and increase social interactions out of it, some districts have banned cell phones in the entire school, and some even while on the bus. For example, Emmett, Valley View, and West Ada have all put new district-wide policies in place for personal devices. Boise, meanwhile, is leaving it up to each school to make their decisions. So it's been about a week since school started this year, and Aspen Schumpert, she checked in with West Ada to see how it's going so far.
A new normal this year in the West Ada School District.
It's really getting those cell phones out of the hands of the students. That way they're engaged in their learning.
Cell phones shouldn't be in your bag or in your locker, but instead.
So when they come into the classroom, they have their own slots, and we have these calculator holders, and everyone has their place where they put it.
Mountain View High School has been monitoring cell phones for the last 3 years, requiring them to be out of sight during class. But now, with this year's district-wide rule in effect.
The biggest change is turning off the devices and making sure that the smartwatches and earbuds are out.
Principal Montagna says Mountain View students are transitioning well to cell phones needing to be off and in a certain spot. West Ada's policy states personal devices cannot be on them during class time, and they need to be in a designated storage bin. The rule came from board trustee David Benetti.
Our primary obligation is a distraction-free environment for our kids, and cell phones are the ultimate distraction. So removing it from the instructional environment so that our teachers can focus on teaching our kids and keep us at the top of reading and at the top of math, it's where we want to be.
Fewer distractions and more social interactions. Principal Montagna says it's been exactly that.
If they don't have those cell phones in their hands, they're more engaged, it's less distracting.
He says students come in and get right into their learning. Whether or not students can use their devices during breaks is up to the individual schools.
We let them have it during passing period, during lunchtime.
And during class time, if a student needs to leave, like for the bathroom, phones still stay in their classroom spot.
The first time will be just a warning they can pick it up after school. The second time, the parents will have to come to the school and pick up their cell phone if they have a second offense on that. But really, we've been very good in the hallway.
It's been just over a week adapting to the full ban, but a good first week.
It's been fantastic. I mean, I got to say that I'm so impressed with the teachers. They understand the importance of it, and I feel like our parents and our students see the importance of it.
Another school district here in the Treasure Valley that started a district-wide ban this year is Emmett School District. Some of their individual schools, like West Ada, had also regulated their cell phones in past years. On top of phones needing to be away during all school hours, in lockers or in spots in the classroom, Brian, Emmett is doing something that not all of these districts are doing by also adding in that they need to be away on school vehicles.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that's going, but I think it's worth checking in because it's a unique piece of these cell phone bans that we're seeing.
Yeah, and if you know how it's going in Emmett, please let us know. But we were talking about, like, don't bus drivers have enough to worry about?
Right, and
as
how
opposed to who's on their phone in the very back?
Right. I'd be curious to see how they're enforcing that on the bus and if people or students are still using their cell phones on their way home or to school.
And this also has been an adjustment for parents. I mean, speaking as one.
Yes.
It's so easy, just kind of, hey, what time you finished? Will you need to be picked up after school? Whatever. That isn't a thing as easily to do anymore.
Right, and we have a few bus companies that are still working out kinks, and we've heard of some students that are getting on the wrong bus and getting off at the wrong stop. So maybe having those cell phones to communicate with parents is a good thing, but maybe it's working over in Emmett and it's going good.
All right, new era. All right, thank you very much, Ashman.
So we're taking a look here from this morning. This is the Bogus Basin webcam. And, you know, normally last few days, several days actually, we've been able to see the valley, as you can see. This is this morning. As we go through the day, I'm going to stop it right there. And you can see from the camera, you can see the top of Schaefer Butte, but you can't see Boise down below. We did get more smoke coming into the area for it today. Now, the temperature only reached 94 so far. I say that because it's been 94 since 4 o'clock. It hasn't come up any at that point. Not wanting it to necessarily, but anyway, we've got 94 degrees there. You see it's well above the average of 89. And most of our lows, they're getting down there, but the average low is 60. So if you can imagine, morning lows are fairly cool, but we still have those records that are up around 100, showing that this time of year that could happen. However, the next 10 days, and yesterday, if you're watching, I had some information on the 30-day forecast. And the 30-day forecast that puts us into about the middle of September looks a lot like this right along through here. We're going to have our ups and downs, which is an indication that's trying to move toward fall. We see those temperatures dropping. They're not that consistent, 95 and 100. And so we're starting to see that pattern change. And it starts with this weekend, as the high temperatures will be down into the lower 70s and a chance of showers there. After that storm system moves out, it heats up. Then the next storm, you see how it drops, and then it heats up. That's kind of the situation that we see. We could still see some 80s and some 90s. Right now in our 30-day outlook, it doesn't necessarily push us above 100 once again. Not saying that it won't, but it won't be with the consistency like we had in July, especially the first part of August. Now, the biggest thing that we want to mention is this weekend, and especially in the mountains. And if you're going to the West Central Mountains, expect a low Saturday morning of 42. Sunday morning, this is a big deal, down to 38 degrees, as you notice there. High temperatures will be up around 57 for Saturday, and Sunday will be up to 60 degrees. Look at it this way. Sunday, most of the showers will be gone. It'll be decreasing. If you see a shower in some of those mountain areas, it looks like it's more middle of the day, and it's going to be middle of the day and in the afternoon. There could even be a little bit of lightning up there, especially late Friday night into early Saturday morning, which is quite a concern. So you see light winds and showers Saturday, decreasing clouds, and showers as we get into Sunday. As you look here at the watches and warnings map, well, the red, of course, that's a warning. That's because of the lightning coming in. So we're talking about red flag warnings for fires. And this is a watch that could become a warning depending on that storm and what we see. The biggest part of this looks like the west central and the central mountains. Now, if you look at the air quality, it's looking pretty decent. Not as good as yesterday. We had a lot of greens, good air quality yesterday, especially in the valley. But so far, we're still looking at some yellows, but still the low yellow. And as you look at the smoke coming through, just look at that. Watch this from the south. That's the reason why we have a little more smoke around the area. Now, these conditions could change because we have this front coming through. The low, which is up here around Vancouver, has dropped down right here along western Washington and Oregon. The heat is out ahead of it coming in from the south. This is the cooler air that's going to be coming into our area. So look at temperatures tomorrow, basically into the 80s around most spots for the Magic Valley. And expect your mountains to be in the upper 60s as we go into the weekend, dropping quite a bit. But for tomorrow, about 70 degrees. Down in valley locations, highs will be right around 80 degrees for tomorrow to 82 for Boise. So there's a drop of almost 15 degrees, almost 20 degrees when you look at what's happening for Saturday. And that's the first alert weather day. We're mentioning it because it's such a change that if you need to change your plans, you may want to do that and looking at that. And then next week, we're back to some sunshine and warming up again.
All right, welcome back. Let's get to your comments that you sent in during today's 208, like this one from Jim, referring to what's happening in District 11 and the Secretary of State offering an opinion, then going back and saying, well, actually, that's not the thing. At least we live where the powers admit where they're wrong, says Jim. That's true. It's okay to admit you made a mistake and then correct it, fix it, make sure, well, everybody is put on the right side of that one. So that's kind of what happened with that. It's so sad schools took so many years to recognize the distractions cell phones cause. How many kids who are now adults don't recognize fellow classmates of years past? Well, if we learned anything during COVID, school districts can't just or don't just do things without the parental permission. Parents are involved when it comes to school board meetings and stuff like that. So the last time school districts tried to just say, here's what we're going to do, remember that? COVID, masks, all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't just the districts that are making this decision. Parents are involved in this decision as well. How about what's happening in Emmett? We asked, we don't know how it's happening on the buses, or what's happening on the buses, but this one from CP in Emmett. My 5-year-old just got off the bus today with a story about a girl on the bus showing him funny videos on her phone. Like we said, bus drivers have a lot to worry about already, probably not monitoring what's happening in the back of the bus when it comes to phones as much as we think, or at least the rule says they should. A lot has changed since 1984. Idaho is now led by Republicans. Backwater Boise has been discovered, but thankfully, KTVB anchors still wear stylish plaid sports jackets. We try to. That is cool. That is well, back to basics, I guess. We'll see you tomorrow.